Good afternoon, Regan. I heard a bit of breakup in the signal, so if I'm breaking up, let me know and I will turn off my camera. But to the citizens of the Western Cape, thank you very much for joining us. To the media, thank you very much for joining us in this Digicon. We held one yesterday. This one today is more of, as we would call it, a WOGA media conference, the whole of government approach. So we've got many more of our government ministers reporting back as to what is happening across the province. I am very relieved that we've seen a reprieve in the weather and that it is subsiding, although we did see it move up towards the Garden route. I also would like to convey my deepest condolences to those families who've lost loved ones during this tragic event over the last few days, but also my gratitude once again to all of the government officials in every aspect out there 24/7 trying to mitigate risk, trying to make it easier for our citizens during this horrendous flood and massive damage. Of course, it is mop-up time. We'll really be starting to only count the costs now. So without any further ado, I think let's get on. There's many speakers, so let's get on with this press conference so that we can give as much detail that we do have, of course, while things are still quite unstable. Perhaps my last comment would be looking at the amount of people reacting to our social media posts. We will keep updating you. It is very difficult to answer everybody individually as to whether a road is open or not, or they can get from A to B. We will endeavor to try and do it, but as I'm talking as an individual with a Facebook page, but perhaps also just to utilize the data. I'm sure that will help you, and also look at your local government web pages as well. It will give you detail as we are mopping up and as we are opening up. But again, thank you very much for joining us. And Regan, back to you.
Thank you, Premier. As you've indicated, we've got quite a few speakers who will be giving presentations through the course of this Digicon, just to give you a little more depth to the information that we have at our disposal at this time. I'll now hand over to the Western Cape Minister for Local Government, Environmental Affairs and Development Planning, Mr. Anton Bredell. Good afternoon, Minister.
Good afternoon, Premier and colleagues. Thank you very much. We've just finished our disaster management briefing this morning. Yeah, Premier, we're busy with the mop-up and the recovery phase. So lots of things happening, but everything under control. I think that we can state that there's also going to be a bit of a difference between the information that we share and that the formal information that people will receive. For instance, the weather services will say that Stellenbosch received 194 millimeters of rain, but in Stellenbosch, other stations will measure much more. So, but that's ongoing information. We can state that we've received a lot of rain, anything from new records standing for 28 years to 62 years. That's information that we will share as we get it, and as time continues, we will do some research to determine this kind of weather. Obviously, this speaks also to climate change and the future challenges that we will need to face. I had to phone HOD Goods this morning. You remember the debate on the Ashton Bridge, where I was of opinion that it's an over-design, and I must congratulate HOD Goods and the engineers, because that was the right call from them to build that bridge, and the bridge is standing. Whereas if we've done a much easier and a much cheaper product, it would have been washed away. So how are we going to plan our infrastructure going forward in the future? It must be with future thinking, and climate change very much up in our face. Otherwise, we're going to chase our tail with each storm that we will get. We received various reports this morning, and I'm not going to repeat the reports because there's people on this platform that will talk to it. but to state that a lot of roads still close. We managed to open one lane here and there, like Salori's Pass, but also caution people that they must drive safely because it's slow-moving traffic. We realize the importance of opening roads and trying to get people back to their homes. For us, it's very important. And to state, Premier, and in the city of Cape Town, currently, and remember, this is information that we try to verify and it will change going on. City of Cape Town currently more or less 1,500 structures affected, 6,000 people. In Breda Valley, 2,000 families been cut off in the GG camp. So DSD, SASA, the teams are out there trying to get to them and to support them. Overall, in the Cape Winelands, around about 200 to 2,588 affected structures. Currently a need for 588 displaced people that we house in different town halls, churches, etc. And let me also use this opportunity to thank the communities for jumping in and helping us. Also in Franshoek and those areas, there's a lot of pressure in Stellenbosch, Overstrand, throughout the Overstrand area, there's a lot of pressure. We currently need to talk to Eskom, the electricity, to get that back online because we start to struggle in areas like Franshoek and in Overstrand, Overberg areas with cell phone signal that hamper our communication efforts. So that's for us a big item, and we will keep on communicating. They've also managed to save a lot of lives, Premier. Our early warning systems helped. Currently, we've got 2 helicopters that's looking out for people, and they've airlifted people in Johannesburg, 2 Eskom workers. In Annaesburg, they've rescued 3 people. So very much all hands on deck, people trying to do their utmost best, but also received reports of, I think, 233 schools that was damaged during this phase, and the colleagues will elaborate on that. So from my side, I don't know, Chair, if you're going to direct us through the program. If so, I just want you to also incorporate DSD. They're going to be now a very important role player going forward, and I've got the HOD here with me. I don't see them on the program, but yeah. Then back to you, Chairperson.
Thank you, Minister. We'll now hand over to our colleagues at the Department of Infrastructure. And Mr. Jandre Bakker will give us an update on the impact on, of course, roadways and other associated infrastructure. Over to you, Jandre.
Thank you, Regan. I just want to check whether the slideshow will be presenting, but I will start running through our presentation with your permission. Thank you, Chair. If we look at, thank you very much for that, Kylie and the team. If we look at the first slide for infrastructure, it really shows the magnitude when we say that a road is overtopped. It's not just a section of a road. That specific image speaks to the road between Bredasdorp and Struisbaai, which makes it very difficult when someone asks us, when will you be reopening the road? Because it depends on when the water has subsided sufficiently. If we look at the scale of that picture alone, you can see that it will take some time for water to subside. When we look at our road closures, our strategy remains to first make safe, to make sure that no one gets hurt, etc., when using them. Then it's to provide access after the incident or the event. So the pretty part, resurfacing, etc., will follow later. Once we've done our proper planning, the first priority is to get access to all our areas. If we look at the main route detours, the N2 at Botrevier, as we all know, has been washed away. So the alternative route is via Swellendam, the R60, which will carry significant traffic volumes and have been carrying significant traffic volumes over the past 24 hours. The N1 at the Dorens is currently still closed, but we have an alternative route via the R46 Tronsberg Pass to Ceres. So that is a route, so people can come into town. It is just with some detours. The next couple of slides, Premier, Ministers, really just speaks to the various roads that are closed. If it is red, and we will share the presentation, if it is red, it is closed. If it is orange, we are already making some good headway in restoring access, and green is where we have restored access. And if we look at this, it's mainly our coastal areas, the Struisbaais, the Arnestons, etc., that are still cut off to a greater extent. And then obviously other ancillary reporting that we have, for example, the pond being out of service. If we look at the West Coast, once again, we've also seen some damage, despite it not being as much on the brunt of the weather system. We have seen some damage to roads and roads that have been cut off and areas that have been cut off. We look especially at Algeria in that area. We can move to the next slide, which just continues our West Coast roads. You will see the Darling, Mamre, Porseleinberg, and then a number of OP roads. So those are roads that go over private property but are considered access roads to other areas. If we go further in the presentation, you will also see the Cape Winelands District Municipality, which had a great number of roads that have been overtopping, which means that we can't necessarily use them safely. Where water has subsided sufficiently, even if a road is overtopped. If it is deemed safe, we are allowing traffic through, but obviously with caution. We've seen a lot of damage in the Franschhoek area, especially in the town itself. So the Franschhoek Pass is closed, which makes it very difficult for alternative routes once you're on the N2 and you realize that you can't go past Portrivier. If we go on, thank you very much. If we look at the city of Cape Town, Chapman's Peak is currently closed. Baden-Powell has a lane closure. Lowry's Pass has since been reopened. So we are very excited about that because it does take a lot of pressure to coastal areas. The only reason is people should remember that that does not mean that you can pass Portrivier once you've passed Lowry's Pass. The alternative to the coastal areas, the R44 Clarence Drive remains closed. If we look at the Garden Route, we've got our Swartberg Pass closed, Meyringspoort closed, at Karatara we're overtopping, Prince Alfred Pass closed, and then we've got the Gona River that's also overtopping. In the Central Karoo, it's mainly our Swartberg Pass that links the Garden Route and the Central Karoo that's closed. We've got access to Prince Albert N1, and then the Moordenaars Karoo after the previous flooding suffered severe damage, and that damage has been exacerbated by the current weather system. If we move on, if we look at our human settlements, and you mentioned the number of structures, Minister Bredell, and if we look at that image, it really shows the reality facing our citizens at this stage, and it's quite poignant that we look at that picture. Thank you, Kylie. If we move on, the statistics that we will share differ slightly from yours, Minister Bredell, because we look at a granular level on where we have been able to start assisting. So if we look at Theewaterskloof, 11 people. If we look Greyton, Genadendal, over 200 people that have been evacuated. Riviersonder End, approximately 600 people that are in need of support. If we look at City of Cape Town, a number of our informal settlements have suffered some damage and needs our assessments. Our initial assessments from a human settlements perspective in our branch human settlements indicate that more than 1,000 structures have been impacted, and as you mentioned, that number is growing. But sand and milling have already started being distributed to assist those affected communities. And we are very grateful to our humanitarian relief agencies that are supporting us with getting those help to the people. Cape Winelands, once again, mainly in our Drakenstein area, where we have that 117 households in Drakenstein, in Bekwene, that needs our assistance. Garden Route, Central Karoo and West Coast. Luckily, we haven't received any large incidents reported in those areas as a result of the inclement weather. From our branch Provincial Public Works, Minister, you have mentioned that there are damages reported to education infrastructure and health infrastructure, but from a general infrastructure perspective, our strategy remains to make it safe so that service delivery can continue. And then the bigger damage was at our top yard, where we've had some calm ports fall onto vehicles, damaging both vehicles and obviously the infrastructure. We've had some solar panels coming loose on a number of our buildings, especially the 9 Dorp Street campus. And then we've already activated teams to make sure that all other PV panels are safely affixed in case they are coming loose over the past or next couple of days. Where you will see we've already sent out teams, and we once again, as the Premier mentioned, want to thank our general infrastructure and maintenance teams. They started on Saturday, worked through the night to Sunday, and then just had a quick break and started on Sunday afternoon again. The only public-facing facility that is currently closed from a general infrastructure perspective is the reading room at the Archives building in Ruland Street. It had some storm damage with leaks, etc., but luckily no records were damaged, but the building needs to be assessed before we can allow the public back in. And that's it from my side. Thank you very much, Minister and Chair.
Thank you, Yandre. You'll note that the Western Cape Minister of Infrastructure is also in on the call, joining the Premier, Minister Tertius Simmers. If you have anything to add, sir, you're welcome to do so.
Well, thank you very much, Regan, and thank you for Yandre for doing, I think, a very comprehensive coverage of our portfolio. But just overall, there's 87 provincial roads affected across 2 districts and the city of Cape Town. We have 1,707 families affected in the 2 non-metro districts of the Cape Winelands and the Overberg area. But I think above all, I need to really request our community to please be vigilant, please take care, but above all, please be patient. Our engineers has been actively in the districts affected doing assessments. Our roads teams, together with the relevant local municipality, have been really trying to play their part. I do want to thank each and every one of them. Also, the Provincial Disaster Management Centre and also the local jobs playing their part in coordinating an effective program of action, truly showing that my colleague, Minister Bridial, and his team have invested many years in something that is effective, efficient, and was well prepared for them. Thank you very much, and please do take care if you are traveling on the road.
Thank you, Minister. We'll now hand over to our colleagues in the Department of Mobility, namely Minister Ricardo Mackenzie. Good afternoon, Minister Mackenzie.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for having us this afternoon. First of all, I want to thank all the people who've been doing an incredible job on the ground over the last few days and responding to these unfortunate events. We're very fortunate to have dedicated and experienced teams in our province. Mobility, as you know, has been severely affected across the Western Cape, with many people being stranded due to the flooding and the damaged roadways, as my colleague earlier presented. Our provincial traffic officers have been working tirelessly to manage traffic flows, close the routes that are unsafe, and identify alternative routes where possible. The Mobility Department response has been closely coordinated with the Department of Infrastructure, our local authorities, and other services. I have been out on the roads the last few days and has witnessed firsthand how our traffic officers are supporting motorists and our commuters. If we can go to slide number 2, please. Our deployments over the last 2 days, we have 607 officers that has been deployed. Today, we have 455 officers that have been deployed. I have to stress we cannot give time frames as to when the roads will be open. In many cases, we still wait for the water levels to subside before the roads team can move in to reinstall the damaged roads. We continue to appeal to all road users to be extra vigilant. Please be patient and take extra care if you must travel. Increase your following distance, ensure your lights are on, reduce your speed, and more importantly, follow the instructions of our traffic officials, and please do not take any chances through the flooding roadways. I know people want to get to the airport, people want to get home, but I'd rather have somebody shouting at me, swearing at me over the phone because the roads are closed than attending somebody's funeral. Once again, thank you to our provincial traffic officers, our emergency services, all our roads team and municipal services for work well done over the last few days. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. I'll now hand over to our colleagues at the Department of Health and Wellness, namely Mr. Wayne Smith, Head of Disaster Medicine, to give us an update on the impact of this weather system on healthcare facilities in the province.
Good afternoon, Premier. Good afternoon to everybody on the platform, and thank you very much for giving me the opportunity. If we could move on to the next slide, please. So just really to give an update regarding our facilities. and where we've been impacted. So within the metro, the large hospitals, Grootegeluk, Tygerberg, Red Cross, they are all normal operations, and the district hospitals likewise, with there's slight reduced staff capacity, and that's because staff had taken off the long weekend and now been unable to necessarily get back to facilities. But we are moving into space where we've got people on overtime, etc. Community health and clinics in the metropole, again with some reduced staff capacity, but the services remain intact, and there may be some longer waiting times. I think it's really just in the rural areas that we want to alert the citizens, and that is that some of the clinics had to close. The vast majority of these have closed not because of flooding damage per se, but because the roads to access them have been impacted. And from the list, you can see Groenendaal, which is in the Franschhoek area, McGregor, Towers, River de Doorns, Sandhills, and then the Orchard Clinic. The Stanford Clinic, again, with reduced staff capacity. Stanford was one of the areas particularly hard hit. And then our emergency services, our EMS providers, obviously have been impacted by the road closures and the damage to the roads, and been trying to move patients across the platform via a diversion process. Forensic pathology remains under pressure with the normal workload. And there's a large number of processes that's in place there to speed up some of those processes, so that we can get the postmortems done as quickly as possible. With the closure of Meyringspoort, it does impact on us getting our patients to the Oudtshoorn facility. So it's something we're just going to watch as we go along. If I could get the next slide, please. All right, so I think just to talk about the Department of Health and Wellness and what the response has been, we do have a departmental response plan which is based on major incident management and support systems, and so that was activated very early. And as we're running now through this more of a recovery phase, as I said earlier on, the aim is to get our staff into our facilities and then open the facilities back to normal for our patients. But there has been some problems in trying to do that, and we are looking at an ability to get staff to go to an alternative facility if they can't get to their normal facility. I have mentioned already the EMS and FPS colleagues. Since day one, our EMS response has been very busy, particularly in the rescue component, working alongside people in NHRI, the fire department, etc. We do still have concerns about our facilities in Grabouw and Caledon, which the Eskom infrastructure has gone down, so we don't have power there, but we're running on generator power, and we will be moving diesel stores to assist in that place. I think the important thing from day one is, as the Provincial Department of Health, we decided to take responsibility for the whole of health platform in the Western Cape. So early on, there was engagement and early warnings given to the private operators, the private hospital groups, as well as private EMS, so that we could work as one particular platform. As Minister Bradell has alluded to, now that the weather has cleared, we've managed to get our aircraft airborne. We've got access to 2 helicopters as the Department of Health, which is operated by the Red Cross Air Mercy Service, and they've already been busy moving patients from Bredasdorp Hospital, some children that's coming to Tygerberg. We've just recently performed a rescue of 4 persons that were trapped in Meyringspoort, and we will be moving those aircraft to assist with some of the humanitarian spaces. I think the last 4 days or 3 days has been incredibly taxing, but it has been a real privilege to work in a proactive, multidisciplinary team that has the sole aim of improving the lives of the citizens of the Western Cape during such a major incident. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that, Wayne. Much appreciated. It's now over to our colleagues at the Department of Education, Mr. Alan Mayer, the Deputy Director for General Institution Development and Coordination, just to put the spotlight on the impact on schooling in the province. Good afternoon.
Thank you very much, Regan. Good afternoon, Premier. Good afternoon, all ministers and senior colleagues on the meeting. Just to report that we've had about 16 schools that have requested to be closed, largely due to damage that's been sustained at schools, and also roads that have become inaccessible, particularly in the rural areas. The picture there is just of the Sandhills Primary School. The Cape Winelands district, as well as Overberg and the Metro East districts, were the worst affected, particularly those close to Salaris Pass in terms of the Metro East district, of course the Overberg, and then of course the Winelands as well. We've also seen some damage in the Eden area as well, but not as substantial as in those ones. Currently, we have 152 schools that have reported varying levels of structural damage that was caused by the storm at school. That is basically from roofs that are leaking through to some trees that have fallen on school buildings, etc. as well. In total, we have 242 schools that have reported at this particular point that they have been affected by the storm. And this also includes low learner attendance at the schools. Thank you. Next slide. So the preliminary figure that we have is that we've set it at 26% on learner absenteeism, and that is based on the 1,076 schools who have already responded. I must note, Premier and colleagues, that these numbers are changing as we speak. As some of the areas you are aware that we have absolutely no cell phone contact, and so therefore schools in deeper outlying rural areas, particularly in the Overberg area, is having great difficulty in sending their information through. But as that comes available, we will update our figures and submit a final picture, hopefully by the end of later today or latest early tomorrow morning. So absenteeism is largely due to the learner transport not being able to reach learners' homes where roads have been closed. I think the Department of Mobility has indicated the number of roads that have to be closed, and therefore learners are unable to get to schools, particularly in Eden Central, Karoo, the Overberg district, and then also parts of the Cape Winelands district. Buses are unable to ferry learners to their schools. That is our report at this point. I do want to note that these are still preliminary numbers, and we will finalize all of that as schools submit the data. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We'll now over to our colleagues at Social Development, Head of Department, Robert MacDonald. Good afternoon, Robert.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon to the Premier, Ministers and other members of this conference. The Department of Social Development is working with humanitarian organisations, including the South African Red Cross Society, as well as a number of other NGOs, to coordinate the receiving and distribution of donations to affected areas. And we are also assisting with trauma support and other humanitarian relief in areas as the need is brought to our attention. Social development is represented in all the joint operation centres in the districts and is working in a support role with the disaster management team. The donation drop-off points have been provided to us by the South African Red Cross Society, and I'll briefly give information on those drop-off sites in a moment. But the donations that are being asked for by the civil society organisations include blankets, water, dry and non-perishable food, baby food and toiletries, as well as dignity packs. SASA is also working with municipalities to conduct assessments with affected vulnerable groups, and getting the numbers in from the municipality is still an ongoing process to determine the full extent of the need for humanitarian relief. Department of Social Development offices are all open, and trauma support and other social development services are being offered. The NGO sector is really stepped up, and I must acknowledge their work in this disaster situation. We have been provided with 4 drop-off points so far by Red Cross for donations that the public can use. The first is 21 Broad Road in Wynberg, which is for the Cape Town area. That's 21 Broad Road, Wynberg. In the Winelands area in Greyton, there is 11 Pointers Road. That's in Heuvelkroon in Greyton. And then in Hermanus, it's 2A Aberdeen Street. And then lastly, in Knysna, 25 Trotter Street. Those points are where people from the public who would like to assist can drop off donations, and they will then be distributed to vulnerable communities by Red Cross Society. We are also connecting with the other relief organisations as well to further spread the net. and the food relief and other humanitarian relief that social development has in stock is also being distributed by social development and NGOs. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Robert. And we will be sharing all this information through our press statement that we'll release once the dust is settled from this Digicon. We'll now open the panel to questions. I note a few questions have already come through, so I'll work through them in order of when we receive them. If I could just ask all our media colleagues to keep your questions short and succinct to the point. We are pressed for time. So a question has come through, and it's a general one that is put to everybody, I guess, who's on this call from the Western Cape Government and our partners. It has to do with an Eskom-related matter. A question being asked on Facebook: can the provincial government engage Eskom so that they can improve their comms, their communications with affected communities? This viewer goes on to say that Cape Agulhas is doing a great job, but that the Eskom issue is the only real problem. So could I perhaps ask the Premier to field that, or Minister Bredell, between the two of you, or both of you can field that question just on efforts by Eskom?
Regan, I don't mind to go with that one. Premier? Yeah.
Go, Minister Bredell.
Yeah. Obviously, we need to realize that the storm hit a very large area. So it's Cape Winelands, Overberg, Cape Town. I mean, 20,000 people in Cape Town without electricity. The 3 substations in Stanford tripped, 2 substations in Hermanus tripped, a 132 kVA cable tripped in Hoek. We had to support Eskom first of all to get through because the roads were closed, so we had special equipment to help them to get through. And Eskom's personnel is working day and night to try and rectify and get normalize the situation also in Franschhoek areas. So it's widespread, and I had a couple of conversations with Eskom. I agree, their communication, we need to step up. We will, after this crisis, sit down with them again. I'm a firm believer that our mayors in Overstrand, they've got an hourly feedback session to the public, and it's difficult if they cannot tell them what to expect because Eskom don't speak to them. So that is a big problem, the communication. We've touched base with Eskom, but currently I think the first priority is now to try and see if they can rectify the situation and get the substations up and running. And after that, we will need to talk to them again about sharing information, honest information, the right information with the public, because my experience is that the public will work with us and they will also be able then to plan. So yeah, it's a valid concern, and we engage Eskom all the time. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister Bredell. There's a question while you are on the screen there coming through from the Daily Maverick. The reporter asks, what is the progress with the implementation of the Western Cape Climate Change Response Strategy? Is it achieving its goals of protecting the province against impacts of climate change and increasing its resilience against severe flooding events, such as we've seen over the past several days? Has it had any visible impact in reducing or mitigating the impact of climate change and flooding and the like?
That answer will depend who you speak to. Yes, I think we've mitigated a lot, and I think that our early warning systems helped us a lot. Doesn't mean that we must not invest in better systems and keep up with new technology. I do think that during the budget conversations, we will have a serious conversation this morning. That's why I started off with saying that if you look at bridges, how we design them, how we design our roads going forward, with climate change up front. Climate change needs to land in each department within the province. So yes, our climate strategy it's working, but we need to step up. We under also saying that you must remember we're under huge budget pressures. Our Minister of Finance, Minister Murray, will come back from Joburg tonight, and I hope it will be not bad news, but currently where we stand, we need to cut our budgets within this province, and it's a very serious conversation. because we don't have more money, we've got less money, and you need to cut somewhere. So it's going to be an interesting conversation. So the short answer, I think our mitigation measures work. I think it's the right strategy to have on the table. Yes, people work together, but a storm like this, a 1 in 50-year storm, it's something that we don't have the luxury of invest enough money in so that we can build us out of trouble just overnight. It's a long-term investment. The future thinking, it's a 50-year plan that we need to put on the table, and we will keep on talking to the experts and looking at how we plan our infrastructure going forward.
Regan, I'll also just maybe wade in on that question, if I may. And I don't know if anybody on the planet is ready for climate change. We've just come out of meetings with our partner provinces from 5 continents. And it is the same issue whether you're in Bavaria or you're in Upper Austria or you're in Sao Paulo or you're in Shandong in China. Every single one of these regions have the same issue. And you can see it. I don't know if you could actually invest enough to prepare for a flood like we're having at the moment. But what we do know is that we have to, as Anton said now, long-term planning and thinking. So when we put drain pipes in now, we probably have to put them in twice the size than we have been putting in at the moment. But we've got hundreds of billions of rands worth of infrastructure in place already. To replace hundreds of billions of rands worth of infrastructure to manage more water in a shorter period of time is almost impossible. But we have to make sure that those plans start rolling out into the future so that when we rebuild a road, we make sure that that road can manage the floodwaters. And I'm pretty certain, we don't know yet, but when we're counting the costs of this damage across the province, I want to say that I'll be fairly certain that the new roads that we've been building through Meyringspoort, for example, which is closed at the moment, when that gets cleared, you'll probably find that that structure is still standing. So we are redesigning, and it costs a lot of money and it takes time to put these in place. But I think, and as Anton mentioned, you know, when that bridge was rebuilt, it was rebuilt. And I still remember at the opening of the bridge saying, I hope this bridge doesn't wash away like the previous one did however many years ago. And now it's stood the test of time. And this probably has been 1 in a 100-year flood. You know, I think we're still working out the amount of water, but it's probably 1 in a 100-year flood. So yeah, I think the question is, it's a long-term process for us. I think for the whole world in how we mitigate climate change responses. But I also think that what's happening right now is we've got to focus on climate change. We've got to make sure that we are mitigating that risk from the both ends, because it's not going to be long until we're going to probably be under pressure with not enough rain. We have too much at the moment, but it could very quickly turn to not enough. Thanks, Regan.
Thank you, Premier. Another question came through, and just to emphasize, we're taking the questions in the order that we receive them from Tourism Update. Just a question, I suppose, directed towards you, Minister Bredell, as you are at the heart of our disaster response efforts. What has been the impact, if any, on the tourism sector? In other words, tourism operations, airport connections, any tourists stranded, things like that?
We haven't received a lot of complaints. The couple that we've dealt with, I think that the planes are still on schedule. Some of the planes were a bit delayed going to George, the inland planes. So currently not a big headache. And as I hand back to you, I just want to state also that Minister Marie is also with me in the disaster centre. So from the provincial government side, all hands on deck. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. The Business Day is asking here, do we have, if you could just a point of clarity on the exact number of roads that have been closed or that are closed at present?
Regan, if I may.
Yeah.
Thank you, Minister Bredell. At this stage, we have 84 roads that are closed. If you include partial closures, we have 87 roads, but it is a bit of a movable feast as roads are opened and others are closed. Because as we were speaking, the Trudeau Pass between Suurbraak and Barrydale that was closed at the beginning of this conference had reopened in the meantime. So at this stage, we can confidently say about 84 roads that are currently closed. These are roads under provincial authority that excludes municipal streets. Thank you very much, Minister.
Thank you.
Thank you, Yandre. Two questions coming through here on the number of fatalities at this stage.
It's for me difficult to speak to that currently. In the city of Cape Town, more or less 8. Remember, the search and rescue is still ongoing. And in the rural area, I know of 4 bodies or 4 rescue that's currently ongoing, but we expect the worst there. But just to state that we also don't speak to that before we can inform the families. I just think it's right that the families don't read or hear it on social media, but that we first talk to the families if we found a body, etc. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. 2 questions here to do with requesting or declaring a provincial state of disaster. The first question saying, from the last flooding we saw in June, has there been any update on whether there will be any kind of disaster declaration for the Western Cape or those affected areas? And for the current situation, Minister, are we considering requesting such a declaration to be made?
We must first do a damage assessment. Then we will do a classification, and the National Disaster Management Centre will then decide if it qualifies to be a disaster declaration. But I can also state that the President did call the Premier and offer some help. And after this meeting between myself and Schalk, and the Minister of the Acting Minister of Infrastructure, Minister Maree, we will discuss writing to the President to ask them that the South Africa Defence Force got an engineering department, if they can be released to support, especially the Sunrail roads, so that we can fix those bridges as quick as possible. Thank you.
Just to note the question from Bloomberg on the impact of climate change. I think we've dealt with that question, but the reporter goes on to ask about the number of people who've had to be evacuated. There was a slide that spoke to that. I think it was it you, Yandre, or Minister? Maybe you've got those figures on hand there.
I think Yandre's got it in front of him. It's moving target, so I think Yandre's ones will be more accurate. So Yandre, can you just quickly speak to that again?
Apologies, Minister. I lost a bit of connectivity when Regan asked. Regan, do you mind just repeating that, please?
Not a problem, Yandre. Just the number of people and communities who've been evacuated.
That is quite a little bit of once again, as Minister says, a moving feast. At this stage, our count is at 1,000 households that have been affected. And obviously, we're talking a rough estimate of about 3 to 5 individuals per household. So we are talking quite a considerable number. At this stage, according to our human settlement statistics, we're looking at 1,000 families.
That is in the metro. And then in the rural areas in Cape Winelands, 588 displaced people. Yeah, so that's what we currently have in front of us.
Great, thank you. And just to note those questions on the impact on the agriculture sector, as it's been indicated, we are still doing assessments that will take some time. We are unfortunately at the mercy of nature. We have to allow those flood waters to recede before we can get a better, clearer picture on the impact on our agriculture sector. I note those are the questions that have come through on the chat room here. You are welcome to reach out to myself or my other colleagues in the various departments if you have further questions. But I'd now just like to hand over to the Premier for his concluding remarks.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Regan. I want to thank each and every one of the officials and ministers who've pulled all of this report together. Of course, as the questions have been coming through, and the numbers come through. They're changing all the time because obviously we are in the middle of this crisis. Again, happy that we're starting to see a subsidence, a reduction in rain and open skies. That definitely will help us. I think my last message again is to the citizens of our province. Please be kind to one another. Please continue to try and help one another. Please be patient. I know that many of you are stuck, can't get to wherever you were supposed to get to. Perhaps in the words of Minister Mackenzie, let's not have a tragedy because you are impatient and trying to get somewhere. I know that we're under pressure. Everybody will be doing their level best to make sure that we can get you to where you need to get to as quickly as possible. But with 87 roads closed altogether, you know that it's a lot of roads. We've got to get in there and check the integrity of the bridge, for example, before people cross it. I saw the picture of a bakkie that went through a bridge on the way back from McGregor. Please, we do not want to take chances. We do not want statistics. We want people to be safe and sound. So once again, thank you very much. Please make sure that you just monitor. You can monitor our Facebook sites. You can monitor our websites. With the updated detail, we'll keep updating you as the roads get cleared or partially cleared, so it will enable you to get from A to B. But please, once again, let's be patient, and thank you very much to everybody involved, from civil society, from municipalities, open halls, and then, of course, from our emergency personnel in our medical system, in our traffic system, in our law enforcement system. To every single one of you, thank you for what you're doing. And of course, we will keep doing it until we've got past this. Thank you very much, and we'll let you know when we have our next DigiCon. Thank you.